Hello, my loves. Welcome to another episode of the Becoming You podcast. I wanted to share a story with you today about a trip that I recently took and how everything that could go wrong went wrong on that trip, but everything worked out just the way it was supposed to anyway. And I know there's been a lot of interest in manifesting lately. So I wanted to share this story and the lessons that I learned, was reminded of about manifesting. So, my business coach offers a twice a year retreat for all her clients. And so, this one happened to be in Asheville, North Carolina. In fact, it was like 45 minutes outside of Asheville, North Carolina. And I'd already booked the tickets to fly into an airport called Greenville, South Carolina. And I was going to rent a car and I was going to drive an hour and 45 minutes to this house that she had rented for the retreat. I was beyond excited. Rental car was hard to get, but I'd found somebody to ride share with, so we were going to split the cost. Like, I was just super excited. So I woke up at 5 on Monday morning, which was my flight was at 8 a.m. And I woke up and I had this bad habit of checking my email as soon as I wake up. And fortunately for me, my bad habit was beneficial on that morning because I had an email from American Airlines saying my flight was canceled. And the night before, we'd had some terrible, terrible thunderstorms. So because of that, they'd had to cancel my flight. And I was in a panic. So I woke up my husband because he's so good about handling this stuff. And I'm going to tell you the rest of the story. But my first lesson was right there. So I'm going to pause. A part of me felt like you're a grown up. You should be able to deal with this. What would you do if your husband was not around? Like, you need to be an adult. And I felt bad for waking him up. But I realized that it is okay to receive support. I talk a lot about receiving and how, as independent, successful, intelligent women, we have this need to prove to the world that we can do it all without anybody's help. And God forbid we ask for help, we receive help. We feel like that makes us weaker and that we are burdening other people or that we shouldn't, right? We have this feeling. And so I had to coach myself through that and say, no, this is one of your husband's strengths. And why not receive help if you can, right? If you are blessed enough, privileged enough to have people that love you, that are really good at this sort of thing and can lend a hand, what's the shame in that? So let yourself receive. So that was the first lesson that I was reminded of. It is okay to let yourself receive and ask for help and admit that I panic under crisis sometimes and I need my husband's calming hand to guide me through it. So we got on so I tried to get on to customer service with American Airlines, and they said that was a 40-minute wait to even speak to an actual person. And I had to get on the road for my original flight time, which wasn't happening anymore. And so I put myself on the wait list for the phone call, hung up. It's one of those callback services where when your turn comes up in the line, they automatically call you. And then I don't know how it happened, but my husband tried from his phone and we were able to get through to an actual person. So that was miracle number one. I have no idea how we manifested that. So I get on and I'm on the phone to the person and she's like, I can't get you on today. All the flights are booked. And I was like, I see a flight that's getting into Asheville. She was like, well, if I just get you on that flight, you're just going to get bumped off anyway. It's already overbooked. And so we were going back and forth. And so I think I told her, you know what? I have seen another flight on Delta because we were on the computer looking for other flights on other airlines. And I thought I'd seen a flight on Delta Airlines for like more money, right? Than I wanted to pay, but that was the only option. I was like, go ahead and cancel the flight. And then as she was canceling it, my husband was looking at the computer getting ready to book this new ticket. And he goes, wait, this isn't for May. You looked at July dates. And so by the time I could tell her to stop the cancellation, she'd already canceled it. And I was like, no, 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 like, hold that ticket. Like, what, I was like, no, don't cancel the ticket because once you cancel the ticket, it's very hard to rebook you. And I just wanted to get my money back from American Airlines at that point. But she'd already hit canceled. And so this whole time, right, your mind wants to panic. It wants to go to the worst case scenario and so that it doesn't want you to feel disappointed. If you can see what's coming, then when it comes, you won't feel so bad, right? Which is why we do the whole worst case scenario thing anyway. Because if we can brace ourselves for the worst thing and the worst thing happens, then you wouldn't have been made a fool. It doesn't feel so bad. You saw it coming. You were smart enough to see it coming. So you didn't get fooled anyway, right? So I had to keep realigning myself, center and ground myself to this is happening. I'm getting to Asheville. This is happening. This trip was really, really important to me, guys. So I was in this flip-flopping stage of like, oh crap, like how is this going to happen? I really want to go, to the neediness, right? To the wanting, to deciding this gets to happen. This gets to happen. I don't know how, I don't have all the answers, but this gets to happen for me. So I was wavering. And part of manifestation is staying strong in that place of this is happening for me. I don't know the how. I don't need to know the how, but I know this is happening for me. So I was kind of wavering in and out. And as soon as she said, I'm so sorry, I have canceled, I looked at another American Airlines flight getting into Asheville, which is a different airport than what was originally planned. And I said, oh, there's this flight. Like, can you get me on it? She goes, I can get you on it tomorrow, but today's flight is, and she just paused and she goes, oh, just one seat just opened up for that flight leaving today. It was like a 9:30 flight, and this was like 5:45 in the morning right now. She was like, oh, this flight was completely booked. And as I was talking to you, this one seat just opened up. Would you like me to book that for you? And it was flying out today. And I was like, yes, please book it. And miraculously, she managed to grab that seat for me. And she managed to book me a return flight from that same airport. When I tell you all my angels, my spirit guides were looking out for me, I am not joking, because the moment that she canceled the ticket and she told me that there were no tickets available until the next day to get me to where I needed to go, I remember looking up and I remember going, like, I mouthed it. I wasn't cursing at her, I was cursing the situation. And I was like, oh, fudge. But obviously it wasn't the fudge word. And as I was just mouthing those words is when she said, like, oh, one ticket just opened up on a flight to Asheville today. And I was like, yes, please get it. And I was so grateful. Like, I kept expressing my gratitude to her over and over and over again. And one thing I realized that I did really well was not to take my anger or my frustration out on this woman. I knew she was trying her best, and I am sure that she'd been on the phone for hours to annoyed, frustrated passengers like me who had just been bumped off their flight without giving any other alternative option to rebook the flight, right? So kindness and niceness goes such a long way with people. It's such a basic reminder. But I was proud of myself the way I handled my conversations with this woman. So we booked the flight, and now we get to another issue, which is my rental car. It's in a different airport. And I don't know how I'm going to make my ride from Asheville Airport to the house. I have no ride at this point. And I was supposed to be picking another person from the original airport, Greenville, South Carolina, to go to the retreat. Like, we were supposed to be sharing a ride. And I felt so bad. I felt really selfish booking the ticket to Asheville while this woman was expecting me to get a rental and pick her up. But I trusted. I was like, this is the only doorway that's open for me right now to make it to this retreat. So I'm going to take it, and then I'm going to figure it out. And then so I texted this poor friend of mine who we don't even know each other that well. I texted her and I was like, my flight to Greenville has been canceled. I'm flying to Asheville instead. I'm so sorry. And then my husband had this brilliant idea of changing the rental car name from me to her. I didn't even know you could do that. And it was like 6 in the morning, right? Which is 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And technically Costco line, the rental was through Costco. And Costco wasn't even supposed to be open, the customer service line. But we called the number. Guess what? Some actual person answered, and they were able to complete our request to change it from my name to her name. And that was taken care of. So now this lady had a car. And I was like, miracle after miracle after miracle, right? And I just kept thanking my angels along the way. So now I get to the airport, park the car, And it was not smooth sailing. There were just delays upon delays upon delays. And that was a gate change, like 5 different gate changes. I was like this nomad, just moving from gate to gate at the airport. The line was super long at Starbucks. But the beautiful thing that I saw was that every single person at the line at the Starbucks was kind and patient, and just people were just in a good mood and making the best of a situation. And the reason that happened was because the barista who was taking the orders at Starbucks was so upbeat, had a huge smile on her face, was so kind to people, and was empathetic to the fact that we're all standing in line to try and get our drink. And she was very apologetic, but also very nice. And I think the energy of people dictates the energy of the environment, right? So just remember, if you are in a situation where it's sucky, you have the power to change that just by your attitude. Even though the external factors are out of your control, just by shifting your internal state, you can change the outcome and how others feel around you. So that was a really powerful lesson. So here I am moving all over the airport from gate to gate to gate. And then finally we get a gate. There's no plane outside. And the flight time keeps getting delayed by like 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And then the plane finally arrives. And now they're like, we're waiting on a flight attendant. We don't have one. Like, we need one more flight attendant in order to board. And I'm thinking, oh crap, like how long is this going to take? And there were all these passengers who'd been stranded from the night before because of the storms. And there were a couple of ladies that I was talking to, and I told them, this is going to sound really crazy, but if we can all visualize ourselves getting on this plane and taking off, like, we can actually do that. And these ladies was totally on board, and they were like, yep, we're getting on that flight. I'm going to see myself sitting on the plane. I'm going to see myself taking off. And thankfully, the next flight attendant, the extra flight attendant they needed, showed up. And now this flight was again overbooked. They were like, we need 6 people to volunteer to not go on this flight because we're overbooked. And if we're overbooked, we're not going anywhere. And I think 2 people volunteered, and they were waiting for 4 more. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I kept thinking we're never going to take off. As soon as that thought would crop in my mind, I'd be like, nope, we are taking off. I'm making it to Asheville today. So do you realize how this manifestation thing works, right? Because our minds are programmed to focus on the negative, on the worst case scenario. It's just how we are programmed as human beings, how we are wired. We are wired to focus on danger, of things not going right, then we are wired to focus on the positive. So it is our job to train our mind to backtrack, to come back to center, to come back to the positive, right? So I kept doing the work, the internal work that I tell you guys to do all the time. It's not like I am completely immune to these negative thoughts. I am human. I'm like you, where I do tend to gravitate towards the worst case scenario of like, oh, this is never going to happen. And then I catch myself and I'm like, nope, nope, nope. Erase, erase, erase. This is happening. I am taking off. I'm getting to Asheville. So they needed 4 more people to get off the plane, and nobody was volunteering. So literally, the person at the gate, right, the American Airlines agent, goes, I'm just going to start calling out names. And if I call out your name, you're not getting on this flight. And I was praying again to my angels and my guides to, like, let me get on the plane. I am getting on the plane. I'm getting on the plane. Thank you for helping me get on the plane. And I was acting as if it's already happened. Not to say that I wasn't deathly nervous, but so happy that I was not one of the 4 people that was called. And then we finally get on, and I get to my retreat, and all goes well. But, and when I get to Asheville, it just so happens that 2 other ladies that were coming to the retreat happened to be landing at the same time, and they gave me a ride. So when I tell you there were miracles upon miracles upon miracles for me to get to this retreat, it was amazing. And then the same thing happened on the flight back. I almost missed my connection. It wasn't a direct flight coming back. And I flew from Asheville to Charlotte, and then Charlotte to DC was my flight. And Asheville to Charlotte was supposed to be a 20-minute flight. and it ended up being like 45 minutes, and I only had an hour to make the connection. And I thought I had plenty of time still. But unbeknownst to me, I got to the gate to my connecting flight, and it said, flight closed, boarding complete. And I was like, what? I had no idea. I was like, what? I thought I'd made it with plenty of time. But again, I don't know what angels were looking out for me. They hadn't actually physically shut the gate at the terminal. So I looked like a deer caught in the headlights when I got to the gate. And the agent was like, are you supposed to be on this flight? And I was like, yes. And he goes, get on. And as I got on, one of the flight attendant from inside the terminal was like, not terminal, that tunnel like thing. She goes, no, do not let anyone else on this flight. We need to close the gate. And I was like, phew, I'm telling you, if I had not made that flight, I would have had to spend the night at the airport, probably in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I wouldn't have made it to DC that night. Anyway, it was full of travel adventures, but it was such a lesson in manifesting and deciding that things get to happen for you, that things get to go flawlessly. And it wasn't flawless, right? But it all worked out in my favor. So that's the other thing, is like, this was something better. This was something better. And despite all the cancellations and the upheavals at the beginning of my trip, it actually worked out way better because I was able to connect to these two women that gave me a ride to the retreat. And that driving time really allowed us to get to know each other, and they were so fun. And the drive to and back from the airport was, the drive time was cut in half. Like Greenville would have been a 2-hour drive, whereas Asheville was only a 1-hour drive. And because of all these flight changes, originally I was supposed to leave the retreat halfway through the last day. Like, because of the flight time and the drive time to Greenville Airport, I was planning on leaving at 12 o'clock that day, but the retreat wasn't ending till 3. But because of all of these changes, I left right at 3 and I made it to my return flight. So in the end, it all worked out great. And because I didn't end up renting the car for myself, that was like a $300 savings I had. So was it stressful? A little bit. But did it all work out for the greatest good? And did it actually end up benefiting me? Yes, absolutely. Now, in this story, the benefits are very obvious to see. That even though there was trouble, there were challenges, in the end, financially I was better off, like relationship-wise I was better off because I was able to see all these women, travel time I was better off, etc., etc., etc. But oftentimes when it comes to manifesting our desires, when things go wrong or when we find ourselves challenged, it's not always obvious to see how it worked out for us, right? But when things don't go right and according to how we want it to go, just because you're not able to see it obviously does not mean that it's not happening for you. It's our perspective and our attitude and our mindset that needs to shift to accept the fact that somehow, some way, this is all working out for our good, that this is all working out for the highest good for everybody involved. So a side note, the woman that was supposed to be renting the car with me and driving, for her, I didn't realize how uncomfortable and out of her comfort zone this experience was. She's not someone that loves traveling. So for her to rent a car and drive by herself for 2 hours to a place she didn't know that well was way out of her comfort zone, right? But she had to trust and surrender to this growth opportunity. And that's one of the things that she mentioned during the retreat when we were going around in a sharing circle. And she goes, like, I am really proud of myself for the fact that I showed up to this retreat the way I've showed up, even though I was so terrified, right? So by me not being there to share the rental with her, she was forced to deal with things as they came at her, which she was not used to. So when things don't work out, remember that it is all happening for your highest good. All right, so that's all I had for you on today's episode. I hope you had some takeaways on how to manifest things for yourself and how to look at things when they're not going right and the manifestation looks like it's not happening, how to reframe that and always have trust and faith that it is working out for your highest good. All right. I love you guys so much. Take care and have a great day.